Back in the day when we had 33 little kids gathered around us, well, they were like from 12 years old down to 5 or 4 years old, and some of them came in as newborns. Cute kids, of course, and we'd have people come and visit us and try to understand what they were seeing. One time a guy asked me, he said, "Oh man, I really love that little girl." He said, "Could I adopt her?" And I'm like, "That's my little girl." You know? And so it just came up out of my heart. I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll trade you for one of yours." And he said, "Oh, okay, I get the picture." Another question that we often got, we don't get it so much anymore because people see the picture now, but back in the day, you know, if people thought that what we were doing was an orphanage, and it wasn't. One of the things that the kids despised was to be called orphans because they had parents. We were their parents. Might be the wrong color, but we were their parents, and there better not be. They wouldn't even let the social welfare department of Thailand put a sign outside our gate that said it was an orphanage. The kids kept taking the sign down. And because they were adopted, they really were. People would ask us, "So how long do you keep these kids?" And I would say, "Well, how long do you keep yours?" When we think about the next level of responsibility or the next level of reach, really is what it is. Raising our own children, and God sees something in us that He wants to extend and use that parenting or parenthood for other kids that don't have parents. And so brought us to Thailand with our 3 little kids at the time, 4 years and 2 years and 4 months old. And then we brought in these little guys from Hill Tribe refugee camp situations into our home. They were tribal kids, they didn't speak Thai. And what an adventure that was. We brought in 27 kids that were orphaned kids or parents abandoned by their parents, whatever. And so these kids have to learn to be children of these parents, and these parents had to learn to be parents of these children and discover the gifts and the particular callings of God in their lives so that we could develop that.
We had our son Sawang when he first came to us. He was 4 years old. He was a cute little tyke. He just very quiet, he has these eyes that look at you. And when he first came in, it was actually through one of our older children that left the home that brought him to us. Actually 5 other kids, and Sawang was one of them. And just watching this little guy, having no idea that in the future that he was going to be a pastor, and just raising him as one of our own. But God in His wisdom was teaching us how to raise kids and getting their potential, getting their gifting, watching it flourish, and then seeing them, they become godly men and women. And it's just been a real blessing for us. I look back and I think, you know, we spent 40 years of our lives pouring in. And to see what God has done with some of our kids, some of them are absolutely amazing. I found it a challenge with our kids because we immediately accept them all. But through circumstances or whatever, some of them still had that feeling of they were still an orphan. So Sawang's never, when he came in to our home, and we just, you know, we loved on him, we treated him like our own, he was like all the other kids. It's just a natural pull for him to call us mom and dad because I was his mom and I still am his mom, and he still calls me mom. There was no real struggle with him. When you think of it, we got a house with 26 kids and everybody's calling you mom. It's not difficult. And the thing is, with the power of your word, when you begin to say mom and dad, there's a connection there. There's something that happens even in the spirit realm, and there's a connection with that. Sawang was just a sweet little kid. And with that twinkle in his eye, and he still has it.
He was a cute little guy, you know, shy as can be. Started to grow up, process of adoption, and he ended up, we took him to Canada to go to high school so that he could speak English really well and learn different cultures and that kind of stuff. And then he came back and he began to work in the ministry. Him and Leanne led the Continuum media ministry for many years. And we asked Sawang and Leanne to become the pastors of the local Thai church.
When he started pastoring, he would go to the leaders that would come to our Bible school. He would ask them questions. He would ask us questions. He just has this tremendous heart for people. His church has so flourished. When he started the church, it was kind of in the red and it was really struggling. It was just a few people, and now He's got over 110 in his congregation. This is just in a few months.
And of course, they've become absolutely amazing pastors. The church has grown like crazy. It's one of those dynamic, contemporary, cutting-edge churches, and we're very excited about what's going to happen, not only with this church, but what happens now is it's changed the whole dynamic of church planting in Thailand. The one thing that they do that's just exemplary is that they're able to raise leaders. And that's something that they got from Terry and I. That Terry and I were able to look at these kids and say, here's the call of God on your life, and we're going to pursue this together. And then they rise up, they're raised up, they're discipled and they're mentored, and they end up in the ministry, and with an ability to look at other people and say, I can see the call of God on your life, and here's what we're going to do to pursue it together. And so they've raised a tremendous team. I think it's one of the best church planting teams I've ever seen. We're looking at the second reach, the second level of responsibility, and the partners that came together to do that, what we've been able to accomplish in Thailand with the El Shaddai Children's Home is absolutely amazing and so very, very rewarding. It doesn't come by having a short-term attitude. It comes by looking at the long-term. We're here for life. We're here, and this is what God has called us to do. And I think that's the difference. That's often what sets us apart from whoever else. And it'll set every one of us, it'll set you apart, is that when you tie into the purpose and the call of God that you're convinced of in your life and pursue it to the end of your life, that you'll see tremendous connections with partners that want to agree with that and want to come together and help you do that. And also the people that you raise up will have the level of confidence that people like Sawang have. It's just such a joy to have him doing the work. And now, like, we're these old parents, right? The grandparents, right, to their children. And we just come along and we kind of like encourage them and tell them, yes, you can do it, keep going, you're doing great, and that kind of thing. And why don't you try this? Yeah, what an exciting day we live in. So this is episode 2 on what we do. And we're going to go into our second level of reach, second level of responsibility that God gives us. And to me, this is a very fascinating thing that happens in lives of people who serve Jesus and give him their all.
Mm-hmm. So I know it's a little bit early, but we're just going to start off with a little test, okay? Just to see if you guys are paying attention last week. Are you ready?
Okay.
So what is it that we do, guys? That's good. You could be a little more excited. Everybody's like, we make leaders, I think. We make leaders, right? That's what we do. We make leaders. Mm-hmm. Do you guys remember what level 1 was last week? Family, right?
Good.
We lead our family. We lead our kids. Good job, Wilson.
Yeah.
And then this week, we make leaders, and this is the level of adoption. Okay.
Yeah, so this whole story began with the El Shaddai family in 1981, and where Terry and I and our family moved to Thailand from Canada and began to launch this ministry that would gather orphan kids from refugee camps. Mm-hmm. And so the story unfolds from there. A lot of course, there's a lot of stories that come through this. We had 33 kids all together, and every one has a story. And we're going to talk about Sawang today because he was one of 33. And the interesting thing about the story is that it all kind of begins at the same place. Every one of us begin at the same place, and that is that we need Jesus to do something amazing in our lives because things aren't going well.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And they all end in sort of the same place if we'll follow what we're talking about today, this deep level of commitment, an adoption. So, yeah.
So the significant thing about adoption, and a lot of times, we can look at it in correlation with regards to our own Christian life, like our salvation experience. The significance about adoption is, like when you're born into a family, you don't get to pick who your parents are,
That's
right?
absolutely right.
You can like him or not like him, whatever, but that's your family, right?
You're stuck with them, right?
But with adoption, you have to make a conscious choice to say, I choose, even though I've been pulled into this family by whatever circumstance, I have to choose to align my heart and say, okay, these are my parents, this is my family, and I'm going to go with that. And it's kind of like our same, experience with salvation, because we are adopted into God's family, right? And it's a choice that we make on our end, saying, okay, yes, God, I choose you. And it's a choice that God makes on his end. And so there's a level of responsibility in adoption that a lot of times if you're naturally born into a family, you don't think about, you don't consider.
It's true, yeah. You wouldn't necessarily consider, but it is an absolutely important level. I mean, even in a natural-born family, the thing still works, right? You have to decide, hey, I am part of this family, right? And it's God's purpose and God's plan. And then, of course, we've got stories that go either way. People, whether it's for believers, there's people that, we come into the kingdom and we can really connect to Jesus and his purpose for our life, or maybe we just a little bit lax about it and miss God's best. So
the point of today's program is to really give us principles as those that are adopted into a family vision and are looking to be part of a family, how we relate to that, because not every one of us is going to adopt kids. And so I don't want you to kind of tune out and say, well, this isn't for me because I'm not adopted into a family. This is how ministry works. This is how family works. And this was the model, this is the way that God used, the method that God used to show you how ministry was meant to be modeled, right? So this was a significant level and a significant learning thing for you and Mom, because it showed you how ministry was supposed to function.
Yeah, that's right. And so it takes us to a greater level of relationship. That's really what we're talking about. And the adoption level of relationship, whether you start with your natural-born kids or kids that you bring in, and we're going to get onto where this applies, like Becky said, to ministry, to church, to whatever it is, that it's a greater level of relationship and commitment. And the reason that this is key is because the success of your life will come out of the level of your commitment. But it's a given, right? The more committed you are to Christ and his purpose, the more successful you'll be in the call of God on your lives. And so this gives us a picture today of how that really works in our lives. So if you're feeling like, you know what, I could have more going on in my relationship with Jesus than what's going on right now, we're going to unlock some keys for that today in the way that God taught us to do that.
That's good.
And this level of relationship, this new level, the second level of reach that we call it, really encompass two things. It encompassed adoption on the one end in Thailand as we adopted these kids, and it also encompassed partnership in Canada as the people that sent us. And the reason that's important is because when you get to this level, all right, it's maybe a local church or whatever it may be, your ministry, you can't do it alone. You've got to have people that see the vision with you, agree with you, get behind you, and partner with you. And again, we don't like to use the word sponsor or support or anything like that. It's partnership, because we're doing something together, we're accomplishing something together. And this is where we build the infrastructure or build the family system where the Bible says that God puts the solitary in families, right? So we came to Thailand, we built the El Shaddai family so that God could put the solitary in that family. So it brought in the kids that were orphaned or whatever, that it also encompassed and brought in a lot of people that wanted to partner with that ministry, and many of those partners are still with us today. We're really so thankful for them.
So how did the partnership process come about? Because before you went to Thailand with 33 kids, you had to have something in place, right? You couldn't just travel to Thailand and be like, help. There wasn't Facebook back then.
That's true. There wasn't anything. And it's interesting because when God puts something together, God puts it together. And I don't think, I mean, looking back, there's no way that I could be smart enough to put it together the way God put it. You can look back and say, wow, look how smart I was, but it was God's grace on us. What happened, the story unfolds, is that we were living in northern Alberta, in Grand Prairie, Alberta, and I got born again there, and I married your mom there. And by that time, you were, almost, a year old, I guess, when some pastors who wanted to do something about the orphan crisis in Thailand after the Vietnam War gathered together, and they asked Terry and I if we would go and raise money, basically, to be able to send someone to Thailand to do this. So we traveled over Western Alberta, or Western Canada, Alberta and Saskatchewan mostly, and just went around to towns and met people. And those were kind of the end of the Jesus people days. And you could drive into some little town in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and if you knew somebody that was a Christian, you could phone him, and he would say, yeah, we'll have a meeting at my house tonight. And so we were gone for 2 months. I think in that 2 months, and knew nobody ahead of time. I mean, we were from the bush. And I think 2 nights in the 2 months we didn't have a meeting, right? And people just gathered and they came and they thought, this is a great idea. Let's do this. And then over that process, your mom and I, it really got settled in our hearts that we were the ones to go. And so things build like that, like if you're just willing to do the step that's in front of you, it's amazing what God will deposit in your heart. Yeah.
That's right. So then as you raised the funds, that was one thing, and then you felt like you were supposed to go. You went without any experience or real missions training or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you just decided to go, which is kind of crazy. And so who, in fact, did you reach then when you went?
Well, yeah, and again, because we had no idea what we were doing. We'd never been on an airplane before. I'd never ridden in a taxi before. I'd never, like we were really, really from the bush. And I didn't know where Thailand was, but the airplane, you get on the right airplane, you'll end up there, right? So it's a pretty simple process, and you can simplify it just by obeying, stepping out. And so we got to Thailand and didn't know anybody. And then just started, looking around. I ended up teaching in a Bible college up in the northeast corner of Bangkok, and met a young man there who was in Bible college from one of the villages up north that had a refugee camp. And so that was the connection, and we got up to that refugee camp and brought kids in and started our family. And it was just really neat to see God put it together. An important part of that, though, Becky, was that we spent probably 6 months in an empty house just praying and seeking God, because we wanted to have the right kids, the ones that God had prepared, and that God had prepared us to be their parents. So it had to come together, first of all, in the spirit realm.
So this part of the story is very intriguing to me, because it's not like you had a ton of leadership training or all of this experience, but yet you somehow recognize the significance of the fact that you were bringing these kids into a family, and you didn't even know what that would look like in the future. All you saw was a family. But yet somehow, I think in your spirit you knew, or God knew what he was doing, right? That there was actually a significant future that was tied into the lives of every one of these kids. So even though you weren't thinking of these grandiose plans that you had, right? There was still a level of seriousness and just preparation that needed to happen. You just didn't want kids.
Yeah.
You knew that these kids would have to have a specific purpose, a specific calling.
That's absolutely right, Becky. And it's really interesting how that unfolds. And here we're coming from a point, like you say, we just didn't know anything. In those days, it wasn't even popular to talk about leadership or vision. The first guy that came to Thailand and noticed that we had big plans in our hearts, he said, "Man, you're a real visionary, aren't you, Al?" I thought he was making a derogatory statement, because I was used to being around people who would razz anybody who thought that organization would be good, or that kind of stuff. And so we just skipped over all of that. But the amazing thing is that the stuff that was coming out of our hearts, and I can remember writing down the things that God had put in my heart. And I said, it would be wonderful to have a Bible college. It would be wonderful to plant churches. It would be wonderful to have a school. It would be wonderful to have a media ministry, a magazine, a television ministry, all these things. And just kind of pipe dreaming, and wrote it all down. But the interesting thing is that, and I lost it, of course, and years later I found a copy of it in Canada. And the people in Canada, our board, didn't know what to do with it. They just wrote on the top, "Al sent this, what should we do with it?" And they put it in a file. And I happened to find it years later. And here is, if you look around the ministry now, all 11 of those things are in full operation. And so it does come out of a vision, right? And even though you're kind of ignorant and don't know what you're doing, somehow God looks at this vessel, and the only thing that he was able to use was our level of commitment. Not our level of smarts or understanding, but our level of commitment and determination to do what God wants, and he'll put it together for you. It's so neat. You can serve God successfully, and you don't even have to be smart. Yeah,
it's good. Hope for all of us.
Yeah,
it's good. And so I think the takeaway for this part of the story is that, a lot of times when you have a vision in your heart, like God, you want God to use you to do this amazing thing for his kingdom. You want to start a Bible school, or you want to start a worship ministry. A lot of times that's what we pursue. Okay, how do I start a Bible school, right? But really you got to look at the fact that what family has God put you into?
Yes.
Or what family are you meant to draw yourself into? What family are you meant to build? And your ministry is meant to come out of family, come out of those family relationships.
That's
and so don't pursue the dream that God's given you pursue the family, right?
Yes,
Build the
that's right.
family, and
Yeah.
the dreams will come out of that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And because the way it works is that God trained us to do the ministry through the kids.
Right.
And I say, you know, they're the best teachers that we ever had. Was all of you guys, and still are. And I think honestly, a lot of maybe the level of success that we've seen is because of our willingness to listen down to the people that we're leading and hear feedback and what are they saying. And of course the kids taught us all kinds of things. I mean, we didn't even know how to speak the language, right? And so a lot of that stuff came through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Sawang came kind of later in the years. In the beginning, the first batch of kids, Sawang actually came after we moved to Sriracha.
That's right, yeah.
And you guys are pretty much by that time almost done the whole adding more children to the family.
Yeah, we were.
But then somehow we ended up with 4 more.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we ended up with 33 kids.
Yeah.
The first 15 were intentional.
Right.
And that's the neat thing about adoption. You got to believe that God has a plan for your life. Because if you look at the outside circumstances, Sawang could say, well, I just ended up here by an accident, you know, like we all kind of do, right?
Yeah.
But it was really neat to have these last 4 kids come in, of course, and there we are again. And again, he was a sweet little guy, just a great little quiet kid.
He was so cute.
Yeah, he really was. He was the younger group, right? And the younger group are always kind of not the in group.
Picked
right?
on a little bit.
Picked on a little bit. And but then it's interesting. He told a story in church the other day where when he was growing up, you know, so he would start to be, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years old. And then Somi came in, who was the last of the last. And he was telling how the boys used to think or used to feel like we spoiled Somi because she was kind of closer to us than the other guys. And then, but now he says he realizes the reason that she was closer to us is because she stuck to us. Yeah. And it was absolutely true, you know. And so then, and I watched this transition in Sawang's heart and in his life. Of course, we sent him to Canada to go to school. He lived with you guys for a while there, and then I don't know who all he lived with. I mean, you know, we've got so many kids scattered all over the place, and watching him go through the struggles, and he had to decide whether he was part of this family or not. It didn't come in the first week. It didn't come in the first 10 years, really. And watching him make that decision that I am indeed in the plan of God. God has a purpose for me here, and I am going to give my life to be a part of this family, and that's what's required. And people that don't do that, they'll miss it.
Well, and the thing about that is sometimes you have to make that decision over and over again, right? Like,
oh, yeah, true.
He had to make that decision when he was young. He made it again in his teens, and then even as an adult, you know.
That's true.
And even now, so every one of us, we have to recommit to that decision that we've made to be in this family. A lot of times you think, if I could just get a new family or a new ministry set or a new whatever, it would be a lot easier. But the truth is, you just have to keep making that commitment to the family that God's put you in.
Yeah, that's
until
right.
they kick you out or whatever, you know. But
kick you out.
keep that commitment and keep making that choice over and over again, because you are going to be enticed, or the pressure is going to be on to want to leave when things aren't perfect, or you're
Right.
thinking it's not going the way that you want.
That's right. And it was neat, really neat to watch Sawang become so passionate about being part of the family.
Yeah.
Because when he began to see that, you know, this is my future, this is God's plan and purpose. And it's rough on parents when kids are going through those decisions. Because if they make the wrong decision, it's like, man, what was the point, you know? But watching him make the right, and I can remember Christmas time a number of years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and kids all gather for Christmas, and, you know, we'll have like 60, 70 people for Christmas. And because they all got spouses and kids and stuff, you know. I mean, we got grandkids now that are starting to have kids, you know. And he had put together a video of when all of you guys were young. And he showed that to everybody at the Christmas party. Because he was so passionate about the idea that this is such a wonderful family. And hey, you guys, get on board. This is what God has put together, right? And don't be so like standoffish, and don't be so unadopted on what God has for you. Get in on the inheritance. And so here's a young man now, of course, married and got one kid, and hopefully more coming. I don't know. We love grandkids. And so they are going to continue to grow the church and continue to be an example in the ministry and a leader in the ministry. And you just see, because he's tied in, that So when I think of all you guys, Becky, you know, in the inheritance, parents leave an inheritance for the kids. Some parents leave a gob of money, and then that's all the kids get. And that's probably not that helpful. But what we've been determined to leave for all of you guys is an inheritance that you can follow. And it's not just the infrastructure in Thailand or whatever. We got kids that are working outside of that, you know, and in different countries all around the world. But it's that heart, right? That this is who you are. You're the El Shaddai family, the God, the Almighty One, put this together so that we could be an influence in the world. And it doesn't matter where you go, you can carry the things that you learned and the things that were imparted into your life, and you can release them all over the place and see great things happen.
Yeah, amen. So just in talking about that, and the reason why Sawang had to show that video at the Christmas dinner thing,
right.
It proves the other fact that adoption doesn't always work, right? And so then the question is why? Because you can have kids who grew up in the same home, have pretty much the same experience, but yet one says yes to the family vision and one says no.
Absolutely. And there's no outside force that predicts that. Because like you say, I mean, we've had kids that, and I look at the comparisons, out of 33 kids, you got a lot of examples, right? And you'll have kids from the same village, you know, the same age, went to the same school, everything, and one will say yes and one will say no. One will see it and one won't see it. The opposite of adoption is offense, okay? And offense is not just, you did something to make me mad, or I'm upset with you. Offense is actually a powerful, almost spiritual revelation, okay, of what's really going on around here. That's a quote. Now I know what's really going on around here. Now I know what my parents are really made of. And this applies to church. Now I know what's going on around this church. Now I know what's going on here. And it's a revelation that will not allow you to stay connected. And I've heard it, and you've heard it, and especially with the local church idea. You know, you come to some guy and he says, oh, now I know what's going on around here. I can no longer in good conscience stay in this church. And there you are, unadopted. You're split off. What's happened is you've got a revelation of something. It may be true, it may be not true. But what happens is now you've become the judge. And Jesus said that is not going to go well for you. It will destroy your life. And so you watch that, you see people that unadopt themselves, it's because of offense. They're upset because they're thinking in terms of what I got, what I didn't get, what's fair, what's not fair. You got this, I didn't get this, you know. And that happens in families all around, blood families, adopted, whatever it may be, especially when the parents die. You know, the fights that happen over the inheritance, I mean, it's so stupid. Who cares? But that sense of, I need to get what I've got coming to me, even though you don't deserve anything, none of us do, or we'd all be in hell, right? If we got what we deserved. And so this whole idea that I'm offended at someone, and so I broke in relationship because I didn't get what I felt I deserved. That's what kills adoption. That's what takes you out, not only of the future, of your future and of the ministry, that it takes you out of the blessing and the inheritance of God. I wouldn't want to be the guy who stands before Jesus one day and had unadopted myself from the people that God put us with. And Mom and I will tell you that's one of the keys to the success that we've seen, is that we have never broken relationship with anybody. Okay? And ever. We just won't do it. Yeah.
Amen. Okay, we're running out of time, but I think there's one more thing that we need to cover really quickly that's important, is what can we do to help somebody have a happy adoption ending? Like, what is our role to help somebody be able to adopt themselves well?
You got to be interested and study it and learn about it. And I wanted to mention this book that's coming out really soon by our good friend and fellow guest teacher here, Dr. Ron Donato. Ron and Veronica wrote this book called Train Them Up, and it's about to be released soon. A powerful, powerful book that'll go back into your past, through your present, and into your future. Whether your kids have done well, whether you've done well as a parent, whatever it may be, this book is a real freedom fighter for parents and families. So we're looking forward to that coming out. I've read it, and it's really very powerful and really releasing kind of book. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. Go do some homework.
That's good. Okay, so in conclusion, with regards to what we do, we make leaders, talking about our adopted, family, how we adopt ourselves. Basically, we just have to reach deeper, right?
That's
and
right.
Create leaders. This is where the future of our ministry lies, is in how we train up those that are adopted into the family vision. And so you have to take that responsibility as your number one role. My number one responsibility is to train and grow and reach and develop those that have been adopted into the vision. Don't work so much on your vision, work on the people, right?
That's
in your
right.
vision.
We make leaders.
Amen.
Right? And we reach deeper. And when you think about people that are still beyond our reach, people sitting in dark corners of the world, whether they're in high-rise towers or in slums, that they're waiting and ready to hear a gospel message that will lift them out of that. And we need to not only reach them with Jesus loves you and he wants to save you, but we need to reach them with Jesus has a purpose and a destiny for your life. And we want to reach that deeply into people's lives, and you can't do that on a surface relationship. You have to bring people into, and so our goal is to always reach people to that level of adoption, where adoption takes place. Between us and God, it's a cry, heart cry, Abba Father, right? The Spirit of God puts that cry on the inside of us, and then he puts us into families, puts us together into the body of Christ. We've got to reach that level. And the other important side of that, of course, is the partnership. Again, we could never do this alone. The El Shaddai family belonged to about 200 people that were faithfully supporting the vision that we shared with them. And it's quite amazing that people do that. You back in those days, like we said, Terry and I'd never been anywhere, never done anything. And we said, we're going to go to Thailand and we're going to we're going to establish a children's home. And we're going to bring these orphans in and we're going to train them up and they're going to become leaders of the nation. And you think, oh yeah, big shot, aren't you? No, people got a hold of that vision. And it caught their hearts, and they partnered with us before we ever went, before we ever had a track record, right? But because of the word and the passion of our hearts, and that's what people are looking for. They're looking to connect with something that resonates with them. And I know that believers, Christians around the world, resonate with this idea that we are to make disciples. We are to get into a level in their lives where we're going to connect with that spirit of adoption, and they're going to come in to where they can be trained. And like you guys, you'll be in the ministry for years and forever, training, always being trained, and going out and planting and working and building other ministries. It's just the future looks so good because of that level of commitment that we made and the willingness that we are to adopt to one another. Yeah. Okay, we're done. Well, thank you, Becky.
Hey, thanks for watching World Mission Continuum. I'm Lana, one of the leaders here in Thailand, and if you liked what you just watched and want to know more, then check us out at victoryasia.com. We want to give you an opportunity to partner with us, so you can hit that Give Now button to be a part of what we're doing here in Asia, which is making leaders. Thanks for watching.